Welcome into the live stream, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. If you are tuning in live, drop a comment in the chat right now and let me know where you are watching from. We have a massive show lined up for you today. Over the next hour, we are taking a deep dive. Welcome into the live stream, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. If you are tuning in live, drop a comment in the chat right now and let me know where you are watching from. We have a massive show lined up for you today. Over the next hour, we are taking a deep dive into two critical topics. First, a complete breakdown of today's housing market, interest rates, and investor strategies. And second, I am going to share the full, raw, unfiltered story of how I bought my first new construction home for $425,000 using the Washington State Covenant Homeownership Program, including the toxic broker I had to fire along the way. Before we jump into the numbers, do me a quick favor. If you are excited for today's stream, hit that like button right now. It helps the algorithm push this stream out to more home buyers and investors just like you. And if you are new here, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our live market updates. Let's dive straight into segment 1, the current state of the housing market and mortgage rates. Right now, 30-year fixed mortgage rates are hovering in the mid to high 6% range. This is creating what many analysts call a stalemate in the housing market. On one side, potential buyers are holding back because elevated rates have reduced their overall purchasing power. On the other side, millions of current homeowners are locked into 3% or 4% mortgage rates from previous years. This creates the classic rate lock effect. When existing homeowners have extremely low interest rates, they are reluctant to sell their homes. Moving would mean doubling their monthly interest payment for a similar or smaller house. Because of this, existing inventory remains tight in many markets, keeping home prices from crashing despite lower buyer demand. I see a question coming in from the chat right now. Sarah in the chat is asking, are prices actually dropping in the Sunbelt? Great question, Sarah. Inventory levels are starting to shift in select regions. In parts of the Sunbelt and Western states, active listings are climbing as homebuilders bring fresh inventory to market. For buyers in those specific areas, increased inventory means slightly more negotiating power than we saw during the frenzy of recent years. If you are looking to buy in today's market, pay close attention to local trends. Real estate is hyper-local. While one metro area might see minor price corrections due to high inventory, another neighborhood just 20 miles away might still see strong demand and stable prices. Instead of waiting for rates to drop back to 3%, smart buyers are using temporary rate buydowns or seller concessions to lower their initial monthly payments. If interest rates do drop in the future, you can always refinance. But buying when competition is lower gives you leverage to negotiate price cuts and seller credits that disappear when the market gets hot. Quick reminder for everyone jumping into the stream, if you are finding value in this breakdown, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Let's see if we can get to 100 likes on the stream today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button right down below. Now let's pivot to real estate investing and how smart investors are structuring deals in today's market environment. When borrowing costs are around 6 to 7%, traditional buy and hold strategies require much tighter underwriting. The days of relying purely on passive appreciation are over. Successful investors are focusing strictly on cash flow and yield. One key metric every real estate investor must track is the capitalization rate, or cap rate. The cap rate measures a property's potential rate of return by dividing its net operating income by the purchase price. In a high interest rate environment, if a property's cap rate is lower than your mortgage interest rate, you face negative leverage. This means borrowing money actually reduces your overall return. To combat negative leverage, experienced investors are targeting value-add properties. These are homes or small multi-family units where you can increase cash flow through light renovations, adding amenities, or optimizing property management. By increasing net operating income, you raise the property's cap rate and build forced equity regardless of what the broader housing market is doing. Another strategy gaining massive traction right now is creative financing. Investors are negotiating seller financing, subject to deals, or master lease options to acquire properties without taking on new high-interest bank loans. Seller financing allows you to negotiate interest rates directly with the owner, often securing terms well below current commercial rates. Additionally, medium-term rentals properties furnished for traveling nurses, remote workers, or corporate relocations are producing significantly higher monthly cash flow than traditional long-term leases. By shifting strategy from standard long-term rentals to mid-term or co-living spaces, investors can generate 2 to 3 times the gross rental revenue on the same single-family house. Whether you are looking for your first investment deal or expanding a rental portfolio, the key to winning today is disciplined underwriting. Run your numbers conservatively, account for higher maintenance and vacancy buffers, and always buy for cash flow on day one rather than speculating on future market growth. Shout out to David in the chat who just hit the subscribe button. Welcome to the channel, David. If you're watching live or on the replay, let me know in the comments, are you currently looking to buy a primary residence or an investment property this year? Drop primary or investor in the chat right now. Next, let's address first-time home buyers specifically. Navigating your first real estate purchase when interest rates and home prices are both elevated can feel overwhelming, but preparation is what separates successful buyers from those who get priced out. The first major hurdle for most buyers is the down payment myth. Many people still believe you need 20% down to buy a home, but that is simply not true. Standard conventional loans allow down payments as low as 3%, while FHA loans require just 3.5%. Furthermore, VA loans for military members and USDA loans for rural properties allow for zero down payment options. However, putting down less money means you will likely have to pay private mortgage insurance, or PMI. PMI is an added monthly fee that protects the lender in case of default. While PMI adds to your monthly cost, it also allows you to get into the property sooner and start building equity, rather than trying to outsave rising home prices over several years. Credit score preparation is another critical step. Your credit score directly determines the interest rate tier you qualify for. A difference of just 50 points on your credit score can cost or save you tens of thousands of dollars over the life of a loan. Before applying for a mortgage, avoid opening new credit cards, financing vehicles, or making large purchases that alter your debt-to-income ratio. Lenders look heavily at your debt-to-income ratio, or DTI. This ratio compares your total monthly recurring debt payments to your gross monthly income. Most lenders prefer a DTI below 43%, including your prospective new mortgage payment. Paying down high-interest credit card debt or revolving loans before applying for a home loan is one of the fastest ways to boost your borrowing capacity. Finally, do not forget to budget for closing costs. Closing costs typically run between 2 and 5% of the total purchase price and cover lender fees, title insurance, home inspections, appraisals, and property tax escrows. In today's market, you can often negotiate for the seller to cover a portion of these closing costs through seller credits, reducing the total cash you need to bring to the closing table. If you are enjoying this breakdown, make sure to tap that like button and subscribe. We go live every single week breaking down real estate strategies, market reports, and mortgage updates. Now let's examine the broader macroeconomy and how Federal Reserve policy influences everyday housing costs. Many buyers assume the Federal Reserve directly sets mortgage rates, but that is a common misconception. The Federal Reserve controls the short-term federal funds rate, whereas 30-year fixed mortgage rates are loosely pegged to the yield on 10-year U.S. Treasury bonds. When economic reports show high inflation, bond investors demand higher yields to protect their capital, which drives mortgage rates up. When inflation metrics cool down, bond yields typically fall, pulling mortgage rates lower along with them. Therefore, keeping an eye on monthly consumer price index data and employment reports gives you a clear window into where mortgage rates will move next. Housing market cycles are also driven by supply and demand fundamentals that take years to shift. The fundamental reason home prices have remained resilient across many markets is a decade-long housing shortage. Following the 2008 financial crisis, home builders constructed significantly fewer homes than demographic growth required, leading to a structural shortage of millions of housing units nationwide. Because of this structural shortage, even when high interest rates cool down home buyer demand, the limited supply of homes keeps prices from collapsing. Until housing production catches up with demographic demand, structural support under home prices will likely remain firm across most major metropolitan markets. Understanding these macroeconomic drivers helps you filter out clickbait media headlines. Headlines often focus on extreme predictions of total market crashes or explosive price surges. In reality, real estate markets tend to move in localized, gradual trends that reward disciplined buyers and patient long-term holders. Let's discuss property management and operational strategy for homeowners and rental property owners. Buying a home or investment property is only step one. Maintaining and optimizing the asset over time is how you protect and grow your net worth. For single-family homeowners, deferring maintenance is one of the costliest mistakes you can make. Small issues like roof leaks, clogged gutters, or failing HVAC units can escalate into major structural repairs if neglected. Setting aside 1 to 2% of the property's total value annually into a dedicated maintenance reserve ensures you are never caught off guard by unexpected repairs. For rental property owners, tenant placement and retention are the key drivers of long-term profitability. A high vacancy rate or frequent tenant turnover wipes out rental profits faster than almost any other operational cost. Offering fair market rent, maintaining responsive communication, and keeping properties in clean, functional condition turns good renters into multi-year tenants. Additionally, periodic property inspections help identify unpermitted alterations, unreported maintenance issues, or safety hazards before they become major liabilities. Keeping detailed records of all capital expenditures, repairs, and receipts is also essential for maximizing tax deductions, such as property depreciation and write-offs for operational expenses. As we look ahead to the future of the housing market, technology and changing demographic trends are reshaping how people buy and live in homes. Remote work, flexible job arrangements, and shifting migration patterns continue to drive demand into secondary and tertiary suburban markets where cost of living is lower and space is higher. Energy efficiency and smart home automation are also becoming primary considerations for home buyers. Properties equipped with solar panels, energy-efficient HVAC systems, high-grade insulation, and smart thermostats command higher resale values and lower ongoing utility overhead for residents. In conclusion, for Part 1, success in real estate requires a long-term perspective. Whether you are trying to acquire your first starter home, upgrade to a larger family property, or build a portfolio of income-producing rentals, focus on the fundamentals. Buy within your financial means, manage your debt-to-income ratio, negotiate for favorable terms, and hold assets long enough for leverage and equity growth to work in your favor. We are halfway through today's stream. If you are just joining us, welcome in. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. In this second half of the stream, I am opening up and sharing my personal story how I navigated the Washington State Covenant Homeownership Program, fired a toxic mortgage broker, and bought a $425,000 new construction home. Let me know in the chat if you are ready for story time. Note before we dive into the second half, to protect everyone involved, the specific names of mortgage lenders, brokerage firms, and individual brokers have been omitted for privacy. Let us go back to where it all began. For years, I watched from the outside looking in as home prices kept climbing higher and higher. I watched family members and friends talk about equity, tax write-offs, and wealth building, while I felt locked out of the room. The dream of homeownership always felt like this moving target, floating just out of reach. Every time I thought I had saved up enough money or gotten my credit score to a respectable level, the goalposts seemed to shift. Prices would jump another 10 or 20%, or lending guidelines would tighten, and I would find myself back at square one, wondering if I was simply destined to be a renter forever. Then, everything changed when I discovered a brand new initiative designed to bridge the historical homeownership gap in my state, the Washington State Covenant Homeownership Program. When I first read about the Covenant program, I felt a spark of hope that I had not felt in years. The program was specifically structured to address historical housing discrimination and redlining by offering substantial down payment and closing cost assistance to qualifying first-time buyers whose families were impacted by historic discriminatory housing covenants in Washington. For the first time, it felt like there was a program that saw me. It was not just a generic financial tool, it was an intentional policy meant to level a playing field that had been tilted for generations. Reading through the eligibility criteria, I realized I met the qualifications. The program promised down payment assistance that could turn what felt like an impossible financial mountain into a walkable path. I remember sitting at my desk late at night, reading through the official state documentation, and feeling a sudden surge of adrenaline. This was my window. This was my opportunity to stop throwing money away on rent and finally anchor myself into a piece of real estate that I could call my own. Equipped with this knowledge, I decided it was time to step into the ring and apply. I gathered every single financial document you could possibly imagine. Tax returns from previous years, W-2 forms, months of bank statements, pay stubs, credit reports, and proof of state eligibility for the Covenant program. I organized everything into neat digital folders, determined to present myself as the most qualified, rock-solid applicant a lender could ever ask for. I felt confident. I thought that having access to state assistance backed by clean paperwork meant lenders would be eager to earn my business. I was completely wrong. That initial excitement was met with a cold, harsh brick wall as I began reaching out to various mortgage brokers and lending institutions. I see Marcus in the chat saying, "Lenders hate doing extra paperwork." Marcus, you hit the nail right on the head. When you start applying for a mortgage, you quickly realize that not all brokers are created equal. I started reaching out to several well-known mortgage companies, expecting professional guidance and enthusiasm. Instead, I was met with confusion, indifference, and condescension. Many of the initial mortgage brokers I spoke with had zero idea how the Washington State Covenant program actually worked. Because it was a specialized state program that required specific documentation and compliance checks, several brokers simply did not want to do the extra administrative legwork. I remember calling one broker who sounded completely uninterested from the second he picked up the phone. As I explained my situation, mentioning my income, my credit score, and my plan to utilize the Covenant program, he sighed into the receiver. He basically told me that state assistance programs were too slow, too complicated, and that sellers in our competitive market would never accept an offer tied to that kind of financing. He tried to steer me into high-interest, conventional loans that could have stretched my monthly budget to a dangerous breaking point. It was infuriating. I was coming to these professionals for help, but instead of taking the time to understand a state-backed program, they dismissed me because it did not fit into their quick, easy commission mode. I hit another dead end with a second lending officer who dragged the process out for weeks. I submitted all my paperwork, only to have them lose files, ask for the exact same bank statements 3 times, and go completely radio silent for days on end. Every single day that went by was a day filled with anxiety. I would check my email every 10 minutes, jumping every time my phone buzzed, hoping for a pre-approval letter that never arrived. It was exhausting, demoralizing, and made me feel like an insignificant number in a massive corporate machine. Before I share the story of the toxic broker, take a second to hit that like button if you have ever dealt with bad customer service or frustrating lenders. And make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss future live streams. Just when I thought I was reaching my breaking point, I encountered what would become the absolute lowest and most toxic moment of my entire home buying journey, a mortgage partner who turned out to be a terrible business partner and a complete nightmare to work with. Desperate to move forward, I ended up getting connected with an individual broker who initially made big promises. On our very first phone call, this person talked a huge game. They assured me they knew all about state programs, promised they could get me approved in record time, and claimed they would be in my corner every step of the way. Feeling relieved after all the previous rejections, I let my guard down and trusted them. That trust was broken almost immediately. As soon as I committed to working with them, the tone completely shifted. The communication became toxic and deceptive. This broker started manipulating numbers behind the scenes, attempting to push me into loan products that benefited their commission check rather than my financial stability. Every time I asked direct questions about interest rates, fee breakdowns, or how the Covenant program was being integrated into the loan estimate, they became defensive and aggressive. They would talk down to me, using overly complicated financial jargon to make me feel ignorant for asking basic questions about my own money. They tried to rush me into signing disclosures without giving me time to review the line items. At one point, I caught a massive discrepancy in the loan estimate fees that did not align with what we had verbally agreed upon. When I called them out on it, instead of taking responsibility, they blamed me, claiming I did not understand how real estate worked and threatening that if I did not sign immediately, I would lose out on buying a home altogether. It was an emotionally draining nightmare. I remember sitting in my car after one particularly heated phone call, gripping the steering wheel, trembling with rage and disappointment. I felt completely trapped. Here was a person who held the keys to my financial pre-approval, using their position to intimidate me, manipulate terms, and treat me like a transaction rather than a human being trying to buy their first home. I knew right then and there that I could not do business with this person. Buying a home is one of the largest financial commitments you will ever make in your entire lifetime. You cannot enter into a 30-year debt agreement with a business partner who lacks integrity, honesty, and respect. Even though walking away meant starting completely over from scratch and delaying my timeline, I made the hard decision to cut ties. I sent a formal email terminating our working relationship, pulled my file, and walked away. Let me pause right here and ask the chat, drop a 1 in the chat if you would have walked away too, or a 2 if you would have stayed. Know your worth, family. Never let a dishonest broker push you into a bad deal. After cutting ties with that toxic broker, I hit an absolute emotional rock bottom in this process. I was exhausted. I had spent months gathering documents, making phone calls, dealing with incompetent lenders, and fighting off a predatory broker. I remember sitting on the floor of my living room, surrounded by printed tax returns and pay stubs, wondering if I should just give up. Maybe the universe was telling me it was not my time. Maybe I was foolish for thinking I could navigate this system and buy a house. But deep down, a fire kept burning. I refused to let bad actors and broken systems dictate my outcome. I knew I qualified for the Washington State Covenant program. I knew my credit was solid, and I knew I had the income to support a home payment. I just needed one competent, honest professional who was willing to do the work. I dusted myself off and decided to launch one final, focused search for a mortgage broker. I did not rely on generic internet ads this time. I started asking around, seeking direct recommendations from people who had successfully navigated state programs and complex deals. That was when I finally got connected to the broker who would change everything. From the very first 5 minutes of our initial phone conversation, I knew this broker was completely different. There was no pushy sales pitch, no grand promises, and no condescending attitude. They listened to my entire story from start to finish. They listened as I explained my past frustrations, my experience with the previous toxic broker, and my specific goal of utilizing the Washington State Covenant program. Instead of dismissing the Covenant program, this broker smiled and said, "I know that program inside and out. It is a fantastic tool, and we are going to make it work for you." Hearing those words felt like a 20-ton weight being lifted directly off my chest. For the first time in months, I felt heard, validated, and respected. This new broker took immediate action. They did not just take my files, they carefully reviewed my entire financial profile with precision. They explained every single line item of the loan structure, walked me through how the state assistance funds would be applied to my down payment and closing costs, and laid out a clear, transparent roadmap. Within just a few days of clean, efficient communication, the moment of truth arrived. I received an email notification from my broker with an attachment, an official, fully underwritten pre-approval letter. When I opened that PDF and read the number on the page, my jaw dropped. I was approved for an amount that was beyond what I had initially hoped for, an approval that gave me a purchase budget of up to $425,000. I sat there staring at that number in complete disbelief. $425,000. That was not just a pre-approval for a small fixer-upper or an outdated condo with massive monthly HOA fees. That approval opened the door to something I had never dared to dream was possible for my very first home purchase, a brand new construction home. If you're loving this story, take 2 seconds to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing you weekly content like this. Having a $425,000 pre-approval backed by the Washington State Covenant program changed my entire perspective overnight. Suddenly, I was no longer coming to the market from a position of weakness. I was entering the market with serious purchasing power. My real estate agent and I immediately began looking at inventory, and my eyes naturally turned toward new construction developments. The idea of a new construction home was incredibly appealing. After spending months dealing with stress, uncertainty, and conflict during the financing phase, the thought of buying a pristine, brand new home where no one else had ever lived felt like the ultimate reward. New construction meant modern energy efficiency, full builder warranties, brand new appliances, updated floor plans, and zero immediate repair cost or deferred maintenance headaches. We set up a tour at a brand new development. I remember driving into the neighborhood for the very first time. The streets were fresh, the landscaping was immaculate, and the homes featured modern architecture with clean lines and beautiful finishes. As we walked through the model home and then toured the specific lot that fit my $425,000 price point, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. I walked through the unfinished frame of the home, smelling the fresh timber and drywall. I stood in what would become the open-concept kitchen, imagining preparing meals there. I walked into the primary bedroom, looking out the window at the sky, realizing that this could actually be mine. The builder had priced the brand new construction home right at $425,000, and because my new mortgage broker had structured my covenant program assistance so impeccably, the financial numbers lined up down to the exact dollar. We put in the offer on that $425,000 new construction home, and within 48 hours, the builder accepted. The period between mutual acceptance and closing day was a blur of activity, but because I had the right mortgage broker in my corner, the process was night and day compared to my previous experiences. Every document request was handled smoothly. Every milestone from appraisal to final underwriting sign-off was communicated clearly and promptly. There were no hidden surprise fees, no last-minute rate hikes, and no drama. Then came the day I had been dreaming about for years, closing day. I walked into the escrow office carrying my identification, ready to sign the final stack of loan documents. Sitting down at that big wooden conference table, looking at the closing paperwork, I felt a deep wave of emotion wash over me. I saw the purchase price written in bold black ink, $425,000. I saw the credit line for the Washington State Covenant Program, providing the crucial financial bridge that made the deal possible. And I saw my name printed on the line marked Bauer. As I picked up the pen and signed my name on page after page, every single painful moment of the journey flashed through my mind. I thought about the dismissive brokers who told me state programs were too much work. I thought about the predatory broker who tried to manipulate me and take advantage of my situation. I thought about the nights I sat on my living room floor, weeping, ready to surrender my dream. Every single obstacle, every single rejection, and every single moment of disrespect had brought me right to this chair, signing for a brand new construction home that belonged completely to me. When I finished signing the last document, the escrow officer smiled, handed me a small set of shiny silver keys, and said, "Congratulations, you are officially a homeowner." I walked out of that office, got into my car, and drove straight to my new home. The construction crew had finished their final walkthrough details, and the house was completely quiet. I unlocked the front door for the very first time using my own keys. Stepping inside, hearing the soft echo of my footsteps on the fresh flooring, smelling that brand new house smell, I broke down into tears. But they were not tears of frustration or stress, they were tears of pure joy, pride, and relief. I had done it. Against all odds, through a maze of systemic barriers and terrible business partners, I had stood my ground, leveraged state assistance, aligned with the right team, and secured a $425,000 new construction home. Looking back on this journey, there are several powerful lessons that I want to leave you with today. First, educate yourself on state and local assistance programs. The Washington State Covenant Homeownership Program was the catalyst that changed my life, but if I had relied solely on lenders to inform me about it, I would have never utilized it. You must become your own strongest advocate. Do the research, know what programs exist in your state, and understand your rights as a homebuyer. Second, never tolerate disrespect or lack of integrity from a business partner. A mortgage broker or real estate agent works for you. If a professional dismisses your questions, hides information, or treats you like a quick commission check, fire them immediately. Walking away from a bad broker was the hardest decision I made during the process, but it was the single decision that saved my deal and allowed me to buy my dream home. Third, persistence is everything. Real estate is not a smooth, straight line. You will hit bumps, you will face rejections, and you will encounter people who do not believe in your vision. But if you hold firm to your goals, keep your finances organized, and refuse to give up, you can break through any barrier placed in front of you. Thank you all so much for hanging out on the live stream today. If this story inspired you or gave you value, please smash that like button before you leave, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your final thoughts in the chat below. Until next time, stay informed, keep analyzing the numbers, and keep pushing toward your real estate goals. Welcome into the live stream, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. If you are tuning in live, drop a comment in the chat right now and let me know where you are watching from. We have a massive show lined up for you today. Over the next hour, we are taking a deep dive into two critical topics. First, a complete breakdown of today's housing market, interest rates, and investor strategies. And second, I am going to share the full, raw, unfiltered story of how I bought my first new construction home for $425,000 using the Washington State Covenant Homeownership Program, including the toxic broker I had to fire along the way. Before we jump into the numbers, do me a quick favor. If you are excited for today's stream, hit that like button right now. It helps the algorithm push this stream out to more home buyers and investors just like you. And if you are new here, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our live market updates. Let's dive straight into segment 1, the current state of the housing market and mortgage rates. Right now, 30-year fixed mortgage rates are hovering in the mid to high 6% range. This is creating what many analysts call a stalemate in the housing market. On one side, potential buyers are holding back because elevated rates have reduced their overall purchasing power. On the other side, millions of current homeowners are locked into 3% or 4% mortgage